What up, Internet? My name's Rafi Diaz, and welcome to Game Curator, the show where we talk about game development through the eyes of a game historian. That means we're going to be taking game mechanics and looking at them like paintbrushes. We're going to be looking at the developers as if they're artists. Basically, you're going to get my entire college degree in game development without having to fall into debt. I should be charging. Have you ever been to San Francisco? It's gorgeous. Constant sweater weather. Perfect place to live if you love cardigans. There's a ton of game history here too. A lot of different developers have come and gone. But one developer has stayed in this city. And in fact, I'd like to argue that they're the spirit. After Grim Fandango's critical success but market failure, a 32-year-old Tim Schafer left LucasArts to start Double Fine, a company with an emphasis on originality, story, characters, and fun. Tim named the company after a sign on the Golden Gate Bridge. It warned incoming drivers that the area was a Double Fine zone. Even the company name is an inside joke. After securing a warehouse on Clare Street in the south of Market District, Tim got to work putting together the perfect development team for Psychonauts, an experimental puzzle platformer for PS2 and Xbox. Early Double Fine staffers included Scott Campbell, a LucasArts employee who was hired after an art show, Matthew Franklin, a Homestead.com engineer, and I butchered your name, dude. And Raz Mavlian, an animator who worked on the cutscenes of Monkey Island 4. The warehouse was huge and cheap, making it an awesome place to throw parties. Double Fine staffers enjoyed an open office where they could put whatever they wanted on the walls and park their cars within the building. The warehouse, though fun, was hardly ideal and came with a laundry list of issues. The place was infested with rats, there was no heating, cars were often broken into, and a dead body was once found across the street. A really wild story has a lady jumping out of the building next door, falling onto the ceiling of the development offices and poking a hole into it. On rainy days, sewage would actually creep up from the latrines and spill out into the hallways. That's gross. If the offices weren't crappy enough, Majesco didn't make working there any easier. The publishing company wanted polished builds with an emphasis on visual flair, which didn't give the company the time it needed to make stable builds. At one point, Majesco refused to pay Double Fine until they met their expectations. Double Finers worked for weeks, crunching with no pay until they could re-deliver the last milestone. It wasn't until Carolina's Murdoch was hired in 2003 that they had a dedicated producer who could soothe the tensions between the developer and the publisher. And after 3 months of crunching, Double Fine delivered the Black Velvetopia level, a build that earned them a green light and allowed them to continue making the game. In early 2004, Scott Campbell began work on Double Fine Action Comics, the first in a series of many comics that would eventually add to the company's culture. Having moved to a new building and being put back on task by Caroline, it seemed like nothing could stop the company's new productivity high. But when Ed Fries left Microsoft, new management didn't look favorably on Double Fine. After having not shipped and missed 2 of their major milestones, Microsoft decided to cut their funding. This was one of Double Fine's darkest hours, since at around the same time there was major miscommunication as to who owned the levels. At that point, every level designer on the team was fired except for one, and they needed to build a new staff just so that they could launch the game on time. Despite their losses, Tim and crew bootstrapped what cash they had left and continued development. Some of the key features that make Psychonauts a memorable game is Scott Campbell's unrivaled art direction. Working within their artistic restraints is part of what makes the game so memorable and keeps it visually relevant to this day. Raz Action Status means a group of developers whose sole role was to ensure that playing the game felt great and that Raz's controls were tight. Engineers built them an in-house cutscene engine and Dougie, a Lua debugger that was named after a local homeless man that the company had befriended. Apparently he had a lot of conspiracy theories. With Tim Schafer as creative lead and Eric Woolpaw assisting on writing on Portal, the game was ready to ship. On April 19th, Double Fine shipped Psychonauts for Xbox and PS2. While the game received rave reviews, it only sold about 200,000 units. In fact, the game received Best Game No One Played from 3 different magazines. But never letting low sales get him down, Tim kept the company trucking, hiring Tasha Harris in 2006. Tasha was an animator for Pixar, who also added to Double Fine's growing list of comics. For fun, the company also created a few small Flash games like Epic Saga, My Game About Me, and Tasha's Game. Armed with only a document, a few pieces of concept artwork, and a short trailer, Tim took to the streets to pitch his new game. In November of 2007, Game Informer revealed Brutal Legend, Double Fine's second game. Signed to Sierra, one of the 4 companies part of Vivendi Universal, Brutal Legend was a third-person, real-time strategy game. You played as Eddie Briggs, a roadie voiced by Jack Black, who had been sent to a fantasy world inspired by heavy metal album covers. The game was Double Fine's first attempt at multiplayer, and the first 16 months of development saw a focus on nothing but making sure that fighting another player in-game felt great. Brutal Legend, or codename Buddha, featured some of the company's most impressive tools. An automated rigging tool allowed them to bring in assets quickly. An automated testing tool allowed them to make sure those assets weren't broken. And a multi-user editor allowed the entire team to work on the giant canvas of a world that was Brutal Legend. The company also started using middleware, software made by other companies to help development go faster, or at least in theory. Double Finers found bugs within the middleware that not even the parent company knew about. This brought back back development on both Brutal Legend and the Buddha engine. Content became hell for the company as well, as the game went from 2.5 gigs to 9 gigs in just 4 months. They were afraid they weren't going to be able to ship on a dual-layer DVD. In fact, they were afraid they weren't going to be able to ship at all. You can't talk about Brutal Legend without talking about the colossal court case debacle that kept the game bound and gagged until its release. In December of 2007, Activision announced its merger with Vivendi Universal, making Bobby Kotick both president and CEO of Activision. During the merger, Activision cut a few games from Vivendi's lineup, including Chronicles of Riddick, Ghostbusters, and of course, Brutal Legend. In fact, Kotick has gone on record in saying that they didn't want to hold on to, quote, franchises that don't have the potential to be exploited every year. Dude actually used the word exploited. While both of the aforementioned games found publishers, Brutal Legend was left out in the cold. Who could save this metal game in its harshest moment? Which altruistic publisher would catch Tim and Co. in their longest trust fall? Why, none other than the fun-loving, warm-hearted, Robin Hood-esque EA. Yep, on December 14th of 2008, Jack Black and Tim Schafer showed off the latest Brutal Legend trailer, announcing that EA would release Brutal Legend as part of their EA Partnerships program. In what was possibly the coolest thing any publisher could do, the EA Partnerships program was a branch dedicated to third-party developers. Companies could work independently from EA at their own rate, and as long as they made milestones, they were good to ship. The Partnerships program gave way to games like Rock Band, the Orange Box release for console, and of course, Brutal Legend. EA was confident in their decision, stating, quote, "We doubt that Activision would try to sue. That would be like a husband abandoning his family and then suing when his wife met a better-looking guy." Not one to take that sitting down, Activision did sue, to which Schafer responded, "If they liked it, then they should have put a ring on it." Double Fine burn! Double Fine ended up counter-suing, which left Activision being all like, and Double Fine was like, "Nay, we are but men, rock." With an advertising mega show that included that year's biggest poster at E3, a Gwar concert at Comic-Con, and first prize at Red Bull's San Francisco Soapbox Derby, EA and Activision settled out of court, making Brutal Legend ready for release on October 13th of 2009. While the game did fairly well in reviews, a lot of people missed what Brutal Legend was all about. Publishing companies wanted to avoid using the word RTS, being both a console game and RTS is not doing particularly well. A lot of people jumped into Brutal Legend expecting a heavy metal action game, but were instead met with a third-person real-time strategy game. The game only moved about 1.81 million copies, which was hardly enough to justify the $24 million it took to build it. Having been the second multi-million, multi-year project that Double Fine had worked on, the company decided to think differently for their next project. They thought smaller, faster, and in multiple parts. During Brutal Legend's legal kerfuffle, Tim organized Double Fine's first Amnesia fortnight. He split the team into 4 different groups and gave them 2 weeks to work on original games. This gave company vets a chance to try on new hats and become creative leads. The exercise gave birth to 4 of Double Fine's next games, like Tasha Hara's Costume Quest, Stacking by Lee Petty, Brad Mear's Trenched, originally Custodians of the Clockwork, I know you hate that name, Brad, which was later renamed to Iron Brigade, and Nathan Martz's Happy Song, which would become the full release Once Upon a Monster. Each of these games found funding from different publishers, and with Tim no longer acting as development bottleneck, he could instead work as a content facilitator. Double Fine Happy Action Theater, a Kinect game for babies and drunk people, I mean they're pretty much the same demographic, hit the market on February 1st of 2012. And while each of these games reviewed well, the company still found themselves in a bit of a financial well. Double Fine was looking for new ways to profit, and after the canceling of both Brutal Legend 2 and Once Upon a Monster 2, Tim was looking at the possibility of firing people for the first time due to lack of funds. It was at this point that Double Fine pulled their ballsiest move ever and redefined the relationship developers and publishers have with fans. They turned to Kickstarter. Originally pitched as a $400,000 project, Tim was itching to make a small adventure game for iPhone. It was enough to keep a few engineers afloat and give the company enough room to not let everyone go. Taking the first step in what would revolutionize the game industry, Double Fine launched their first Kickstarter on February 8th of 2012. The game made funding in just 8 hours and hit the $1 million mark before the day was done. Closing at $3.3 million, Tim and crew were ready to show the guts and glory of game development to the people, from pre-production to post. The Reds team brought together an all-star cast of Double Finers, new and old, including Anna Kipnis, Lee Petty, Nathan Bagel Stapley, Scott Campbell, Levi Ryken, and new recruit Marius, an intern who Tim decided didn't need to finish his education. Tim can do that, apparently. During the game's development, Double Fine started monetizing on new fronts, releasing Brutal Legend on Steam and Psychonauts for Mac. With the help of the Humble Bundle crew, the company launched their first public Amnesia fortnight, giving birth to 2 of their new projects, Hack and Slash and Space-Based DF9, both of which are still in development to become full games. The company also released Ron Gilbert's The Cave, Connect's Party, and 3 iPhone games. Double Fine was back in the swing of things, and with all these new ways to earn money, they were never going to worry about financial troubles again. Right, guys? Right? On December 21st of 2012, Tim posted on Kickstarter that the Reds team was over budget and required additional funds. While Twitter was an utter outrage, the backers didn't seem to mind at all, and after a 40-page forum thread, Tim announced that Broken Age would be the official name of their new adventure game. On May 30th of 2012, Double Fine launched their second Kickstarter for Brad Mear's Massive Chalice, a tactics RPG. While some people wondered whether or not it was responsible for Double Fine to release a second Kickstarter game when their first one was over budget, the game still clocked in at over $1 million in funding. On July 2nd of 2013, Tim announced that Broken Age would be released in 2 parts, with the first half making its way to Steam Early Access tomorrow, January 28th. Starring Elijah Wood and Masa Moyo, the game features voice acting from Jennifer Hale, Richard Horvitz, Jack Black, Pendleton Ward, and Will Wheaton. If you're curious as to what the game is all about, why don't you come back tomorrow and check out my Let's Play. Thanks you guys so much for watching. If you liked what you saw, please like and subscribe. If you really care, share it with your friends. I'm going to be making more content like this regularly. So keep tuned to this channel as you'll be seeing more about game history and game development.